Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back here to RaceSpotTV, and welcome back to the PCA Challenge class. This is round number 2 this season, coming to you tonight from Phillip Island. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Howie Burrows. Ramiro Augustine Cisneros is our producer for tonight's broadcast. Well, Howie, for the 4th time here in Series 15 of the PCA, we head off to Phillip Island. This track is rather peculiar, but really fascinating. It is the home of some fantastic motorcycle racing, but sports cars can rip it around here quite easily too. So off the back of some pretty good races leading into this, I have a feeling these challenge class racers are going to bring the thunder here in round number 2 of this already very intriguing season.
Indeed, I find Phillip Island to look very easy because it looks very fast, but be very deceptive. The 2 hairpins, naturally at 4 and 10, they just seem to come up to me out of nowhere, and if you're not really braced, you end up going right off the track. I'm very curious as well as to how the Porsche cars are going to take the turns. It's a car that likes to turn on its brakes quite a bit, so turns like 2, the really sort of long sweepers, you can have a mixture of downforce to have to get through. It's going to be very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, this track certainly packs a punch. 12 turns and about 2 3/4 of a mile as part of a very punchy schedule of races that we have. 8 rounds in total. Already had round number 1 at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez there in Mexico City. We have Phillip Island, of course, here tonight to round off the month of January. And then we head off into February with the 2 races at Sebring and Long Beach, different sides of the U.S., different sides of the racing circuit spectrum. And then we head off to Alton Park, Suzuka Circuit, Road Atlanta, and Daytona International Speedway for the season finale here in Series 15 of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series on April the 23rd. 1 round in the books, but we already have some points to take a look at. Brad Dunn is your current championship points leader at 350 points as his current tally. Vernon Messer is slotted in P2 at 320. Leon Snyman is in 3rd with Kenneth Eskridge in 4th. John Kaplan in P5. David Sauntry in 6th. Jeffrey Block in 7th. Dave Jones in P8. James Legault is classed in 9th with Robert Gales rounding at your top 10 at the moment. Still very early doors into the season. Can't read into these points too much. However, once we get this race taken care of here this evening, we're going to be officially a quarter of the way through this season, so we'll have a better idea as to who are going to be the main drivers looking to bring the thunder here in Series 15. But here with the Thunder Down Under, taking a look at some rather moderate track conditions, which is rather surprising. You know, usually Australia, everything down there in Australia wants to kill you, but right now the track conditions really don't.
Nice to have conditions that aren't going to ask too much of the tyres around here, and even quite a low wind speed, which is going to matter quite a lot on a track with lots of high-speed turns, I imagine. Because all the turns do take so much out of the tyres, you really don't want to overheat them. You really don't want to lean on the ABS quite too hard. A lot of drivers wrapping up their qualifying laps now, of course, using the GT3 cars this season around, so they do have a little bit more grip than we're used to, and that will help tackle some of these turns.
Yeah, so with these massive GT3 machines, massive compared to the open wheelers that I know are usually my bread and butter behind the wheel, they can smack the curves, but be a little bit worried about some of them around this racetrack. Can be a silent but deadly killer here. We'll have to find out how this is going to work out. This is Joseph Birkenstock, currently qualified in 13th at the moment in the 670 car. Nice to see the Lego machine out there on the racetrack. Legos are quite strong. A strong qualifying run for him, currently about a second off of the provisional pole that Chris Drankovitz is holding on to at the present moment. Leon Snyman set to join him on the front row. Jeffrey Block is slotted in 3rd with Harpreet Bath slotted in 4th at the moment. Vernon Messer and Brad Dunn complete your top 6. But right now, only 10 seconds left to go in qualifying. It looks like Drankovitz may have this one in the bag.
Going to be a lot of cars getting through this track, and I often see that turn 4 hairpin on the first lap as a little bit of a conflict zone when people miss their braking zones over it. So let's see if we can get them all through in one piece this time around.
Yeah, we'll have to see if these racers can tackle lap 1 in a smooth and efficient way, avoid the barriers, avoid making contact with each other, which is a heck of a lot easier said than done around here. It is a small circuit, so sometimes, in fact, quite often, you can run out of space lickety-split. But now we're switching off into warm-up. The calm before the storm, before we head off into the second round of this championship. These racers going to use this as a good opportunity to get their bearings straight and kind of switch their attention into this 1 hour long race that lies ahead with some pit stops in the midst. We're going to have to see who's going to master the strategy the best, who may run into some difficulties. But before we get too lost up in all of that, I think we'll do an onboard lap with our pole sitter in just a couple of moments time, see exactly how Drankowitz was able to get around this racetrack lickety-split. And Howie, I'll pass it back off to you for the track live.
Across quite a long start-finish line, really the only long straight you actually get on this track. The first turn is quite a smooth, quick one, should be able to bring a lot of power into this, but it slows down quite a lot for turn 2. Some cars with more downforce can really get around this, but it looks like you have to back up the car quite a bit. The rear-ended Porsche loves using the brakes to turn, of course. Little kink for turn 3, and then all of a sudden it hits you. One of the big hairpins on the track on turn 4. There's a scarier one that gets me a little bit more, but it's going to be tricky to pack a lot of cars through here. The track tightens up significantly. And you make it through onto exit. Little kink for 5 and another U-turn for 6. Sort of a slow speed as you run up the hill into another high-speed section. Notice the track has thinned out quite a bit from where we started, though. Getting past this here is going to be quite tricky. Really, it's going to be like dialing in those lap times over a big crest for 9. As you go up and up and up this hill, you're only going to do one thing, and that's go back down it for 10. This is the one that really comes out of nowhere, and it's going downhill. It often catches me in the grass. Only a few more turns to go. 11, a bit tighter, and then 12 should be nearly flat. And really getting a good run out of here is often where I see passes done into the first turn. It's going to really be a race, I think, of dialing in your own good lap times.
Yeah, not only do you have to worry about racing your competitors, you kind of have to race yourself in the sense of getting the good lap times, running as smoothly as you can throughout, and keeping it clean and green from the drop of the green flag all the way through to the fall of the checkered. Only one driver will be able to crown themselves round 2 winner here in Series 15 of the PCA Challenge Class. Last time out, it was Brad Dunn completing the sweep, pole to win. Very easy stuff from him. It looks easy on paper, however, it's not really the case once you get out there on the road. So I'll have to see if Drankowitz will be able to do that here tonight, or whether it may be a bit more of an uphill climb for him here tonight. But let's take a look at your starting grid here this evening. Drankowitz, who we just rode on board with, will start this race from the pole position. A 10th and a half is a gap between himself and Leon Snyman, set to join him on the front row. Jeffrey Block will start this race in third. Next to him will be Harpreet Bath. It is Vernon Messer in P5, Brad Dunn, your pole sitter, in Mexico City in P6, Jonathan Sasportas in P7, Robert Gallus in P8. Tim Taplin will start this race in P9 with Keith Markison completing your top 10. John Kaplan will start this race in P11. Dave Jones alongside in P12. Joseph Birkenstock will start this race in lucky spot P13 next to Andrew Hillman in 14th place. James Legault, the Central Indiana region driver, will start in 15th next to Adam Holland in 16th place. Lisa Askridge will start in 17th alongside Sean Bailey in P18. Rounding at your top 20 will be Peter Portanova alongside Jack Stevenson. Bruce Froby will start in 21st. Next to him will be Carl Bess. Patrick Ogrier will start this race in 23rd with Kenneth Eskridge right alongside in 24th. And that right there nearly rounds out your field. One more driver. That's Rob Gerwing in the number 190 car. So 25 drivers set to grab the green flag in a few moments time. Howie, we've already talked about the challenge of this racetrack and how much it's going to be a test of these drivers' patience, skill, and nerve. But you can say the same things about the pit entry and exit that these racers will have to deal with as well.
Of course, with the mandatory pit stop, that pit entry, it really does quite curve in, cuts 12, and then the exit sends you right onto that main straight. There's quite a big gap between the front and the back of the field. It's testament to really how difficult this track is. We had 12 drivers in a second, but for you off the bat, there's several off, and it's just because there's so much time, you can give up if you lose even a little bit of momentum into some of these turns. So much of the track being high speed, if you lose even a bit of speed, you sort of hit your whole lap.
Yeah, so heading into this 60-minute long race, it is going to be a huge test for these competitors. Got a lot of stuff that they're going to have to juggle. I always say the term juggling with chainsaws. I think there's a lot of truth said in just talking about this combination here tonight. We'll see who's going to rise to the top, whether or not we're going to have back-to-back pole-to-race winners here this season, or whether a driver like Leon Snyman, Jeffrey Block, Harpreet Beth, who was really impressive last time out in the pace department at Mexico City, or Brad Dunn, maybe he can go for back-to-back wins to get this season up and rolling. Taking a look once again at the track conditions, rather similar to what they were earlier on in the coverage. 19 degrees Celsius for the ambient, 22 degrees Celsius for the track temp. Converting that from Eurobabble into English, that is 66 degrees Fahrenheit for the ambient temperature. That's 71 degrees Fahrenheit for the track temp. So that is quite chilly, at least compared to racing tires. For me, that's pretty much perfect weather, but you know, it takes all kinds to make the world go round. But most people, when they talk about, well, compared to me, they always say that we need to stop the rotation. Hearing actually as well that Patrick Oguer has not been able to join us on this formation lap. Connection issues dropping him out before the drop of the green flag, so we're already down to 24 and we haven't even turned a green flag lap.
One more note on the weather, even though we're quite close to the coast on an island, as the name would suggest, there is a very, very low wind speed, and that is going to help when you're taking some of these corners at high speed. There's nothing like quite getting hit by a turbulent wake. Here comes the pace car. There's your pit entry. That is going to be tough to hit as the cars roll in for the race start.
Yeah, about to get the green flag up in the air in a couple of moments' time. And it's going to be Chris Drankovich leading us to green in that 009 car. However, Leon Snyman, that pink machine right on the left-hand side of him, has got to look to get off to a flyer as well. The green flag flies. The drivers are on their way with the stack up a little bit farther in the back. Very slow to the line, but we are now racing here at Phillip Island. Fantastic start from Drankovich. Going to try and pull out in front of Snyman. He does so comfortably into turn number one. Now look at Snyman feeling some pressure. He's going to get a move put on him around the outside through turn number one. That was a compelling spot to get a move done, but it works out well for Jeffrey Block, who's been able to jump his way into second. Everybody else right behind trying to slip in tow, but right as I say that for Block, he hops the berm a bit through turn number two, and he's going to drop outside the podium.
Here comes the long run down into the tight hairpin. This is really where the track starts to tighten up and you can get stack-ups in the back, but the pack hasn't completely compressed, so things have mostly gotten away clean. I should probably wait to see whether everyone's quite nailed that before I say it, but I've not heard any news of a legendary wreck out here. Quite a big gap led by that P1. You talked about the great start and the stack-up behind. A lot of this race, if you can just dial in your lap time after lap time, it's going to pay off for you in the long run.
Yeah, going back to the point that we raised in qualifying a bit earlier on, talking about how you need to just dial yourself into this racetrack instead of trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. If you could just run it clean, hit your marks every single lap, and run consistently around here, you're going to be golden. So we'll have to see whether Drankovich can come up to the challenge, or whether a driver like Leon Snyman is going to be the one to maybe force him into a mistake, or at least try and go for the move at the end of the first lap. It's Drankovich over Snyman, over Harpreet Beth, over Brad Dunn, with Jeffrey Block, who started this race in third and briefly jumped up into second, now completing your top five. A little bit farther in the back, that's Beth hopping the berm. Actually, no, that's Brad Dunn. My apologies, giving me a slight panic attack there off through turn number one. Brad Dunn off the back of a dominating win last time out, really struggling as he once again goes off the track through two. Very, very easy to understeer and miss and exit around here. Notice the gaps have sort of evened out up near the front. Leon Snyman got this within about 5 to 4 attempts. It was 7 earlier last lap. So it's going to be a game about chasing down. Here's the replay of what happened to Brad Dunn. These very, very high-speed corners, you sort of don't know how much speed you have to carry, and the braking zones aren't really clear. Makes this track a very, very difficult one for me. But even those small time losses, now it's just going to multiply because of how many high-speed corners there are. Another understeer, and you're in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I think that's the issue that you've really got with this racetrack. If you go a little bit askew through one turn, it's just going to snowball from there. Turn 1 and 2, a fantastic example of that. He ran wide through there, messed up his approach into turn number 1 quite a lot, and then by the time he added his way through the exit of 2, he was just drifting wide, and next thing you know, you're in the grass. You're going to be losing out on a lot of time, and he has lost out on a lot of time. P7 for your race winner last time out as he tries to make his way up from the brink. Right now, though, Chris Drankovic's not really feeling the pressure. Well, feeling a heck of a lot less pressure than Leon Snyman is feeling in second, as Harpreet Bath is right all over him in that 915 car. Looking like that battle for second may get intense sooner rather than later, as we take a look at a moment a little bit further behind Bruce Froby. Behind the wheel, the 130 cars. Sideways snap for him, and he's going to go for a trip into the gravel.
Especially hard under high speed to really work out what's causing these. Notice there was an attempt to break the toe on the start-finish line, by the way. Not really a strong braking zone into turn 1, so still hard to pass there. Already trying to break some slipstreamies. Patrick Hagray also making the same mistake on a corner exit, putting down just a little bit too much power out of one of the slowest turns on the track. This top 3 have run away 2 seconds, but they're all within a chase with each other, I think. Snyman is certainly not letting Chris get away, and that's a wide run for half pit path. That is going to quite possibly kill some of that momentum.
Yes, unfortunately for him, as a result of that moment, he has lost touch of the back of Leon Snyman's car and may feel some pressure from Jeffrey Block soon. However, Block, I think, is more worried about Vernon Messer right in tow than Block is worried about going for a move on Beth. Still very, very early on into the second round of the championship. 55 minutes and 20 seconds left to go here. Drankovic still leading over Leon Snyman, but he hasn't really been able to pull a gap, has Drankovic. It's teeter-tottered. I think it's probably been at its highest, what do you say, about 0.8 of a second, teetering between that and 0.4. He really has not been able to drop Leon Snyman, and Snyman not letting him go away at all. Drankovic is still not even within an arm's reach. I think that's probably within a hand's reach as he closes up the gap big time into 4.
Any closer, and I would have thought Leon would try and go for a daring send up the inside. That we could see that happen next lap if the gaps are going to remain the same, and Leon Snyman's going to close up. Now heading into some of the faster turns of the track, we're going to sort of have to reset this a bit. I wonder how much draft braking we'll see again from Chris Drankovic, because we did quite a bit on one of those opening laps of the race. One more big hairpin. Not close enough this time. This gap's being held very, very, very well, though, by Leon Snyman, especially because the race can be affected by things like the pit strategy later. Leon, I think, is within a shout here of making something happen later, but there's still a lot of race to go and all laps to nail.
Yes, so a long, long night ahead for these competitors and lots of different challenges for them to try and face. I'll have to look through to try and figure out which one of the races that we have from this season is probably going to have the most amount of laps. I would say that this may very well be up there. It is a quick racetrack, this, and it is short as well, 2.76 miles as the total distance. And couple that with cars that are going through medium to high speed currents, that's always going to help. Leon Snyman, though, not helping his cause. He goes for a sideways snap and a trip off into the grass. He is careening his way down the running order, gonna fall outside of the top 10. He thought he had a shot at maybe grabbing the lead. Now, however, he's barely inside the top 15.
I think if anything caused that, it might have been a very, very aggressive use of the curb on the inside. You've mentioned them already, but just take a little bit too much for too long. You could see yourself spinning, and then he can't get himself back up to speed because your tires are just overheated from all the sliding around. It's just given Chris the lead he absolutely wants. Now he doesn't need to think about anybody else. Here's another look, and he is absolutely hugging that curb so much that could affect the balance of the car, I'd imagine. And once those are hot, it's going to be hard to get back up to speed around. There are even more slides trying to rejoin the track.
Yeah, so I said this a bit earlier on in the show, and now it's really come to pass. Despite the fact that this is a motorcycle circuit, you usually think the curbs won't be too bad. They can be brutal, as that's a brutal moment from Rob Gerwing and the 199 car, pitching a car into a spin, heading down into turn number 4. I believe that was Lisa Eskridge that he has sent into a spin. So probably not going to win any awards with Lisa or Ken either. So we'll have to see how that goes. No, another driver losing it. This time it's Harpreet Bath.
A lot of drivers around the top of this pack as well. At this point, I wouldn't count the leader out of a curse if everybody's going to keep going around like this. This one, I don't think it's the Cubs' fault, but it just seems as if these cars are liable to snap if you send a little bit too much speed into these turns. They're GT3 cars. They don't have all the downforce in the world. The rear engine doesn't really help either. It's tough out there. I think we're going to see lots of this.
So another driver losing it through 2, but this time it's not the curbs doing it. The curbs can be a little bit brutal. Some of them are flat, others are very raised, and sports cars, even though they can handle the curbs a lot better than their open-wheel counterparts, they're still finely tuned race cars with some pretty delicate splitters, wings, and diffusers and floors that don't like to be disturbed with relationship to the ground too much. So one whack of the curb, the next thing you know, your car is going to try and do its best impression of a yacht. We brought on board with Brad Dunn, who learned the challenge of this track his own way a little bit earlier on. He's got a first-class view of this battle going on right now between Vernon Messer and Tim Taplin. That nearly resulted in a side-by-side fight into one, but Taplin going to have to back out of it. Messer holding on to the final podium spot as it stands right now, but these drivers can't afford to battle too much. Jeffrey Block is starting to drop them to the tune of now about 0.7 of a second. Drankovitz, meanwhile, we were thinking that he was feeling the most amount of pressure out of anybody in the field. That's basically seesawed in the opposite way. As look at the dive from Taplin at the 4. That nearly ended in a round of bowling. It nearly ended in a move 2. It ended in neither, but he did close up that gap a little bit, if not maybe cooking his brakes in the process.
That's the thing about the turn 1 here. I mean, you saw he had such momentum, and then Tim just, there's no way to actually get next to the car. Because trying to go around the outside, you're not getting any momentum out of that. The inside's always going to be held, so you want to try and make a dive into the 2 hairpins. I think that's really all you have, and even then, you have to be careful not to make an enemy, because it will always be a dive. You're going to etch away at people's lap times possibly over time, but actually getting past around here, it's a struggle. You're playing the bottom with the 76 here, Keith Markson. Maybe, right? But multiple battles going on around the track at the same time. Quite a few close drivers. It's just about seeing where you actually get those chances to make those passes real.
Yeah, it is still supremely early in this race, but we've already seen some storylines begin to brew. Drivers that we didn't see make many mistakes at Mexico City last time around, running into trouble here early. Drankovitz holding on to a lead, but it has not been a comfortable one, and it's not a comfortable gap once more. 1.9 seconds is his margin right now. This is John Bailey who's feeling a lot of pressure. I think he had a moment heading off through turn number 10. Yes, he did. Actually, through turn number 11. I apologize for that right there. That was like a Monty Python sketch. That was pretty funny seeing that right there. Car's going backwards. But yeah, unfortunate there through turn number 11. Kind of that medium speed kind of turn that's just awkward in all sorts of cars. There's no car in the world that can handle a medium speed corner with grace.
And the Porsche is one of those distinctive GT3s that just has a feeling unlike anything else, where it doesn't really have a front end, but its rear end is incredibly strong. Here's now the replay of Sean Bailey, missing the braking marker, heading out onto the grass. It's going to slow you quite a bit when you head onto the track, because you're bringing the grass with you for a while, and that second spin might have just been a case of getting a little bit too eager. Look at those bumps off the track, by the way. If you want to hit that at high speed, you might end up becoming a cruise missile. Is he able to even rejoin? Just about, but it's a long, slow process. Here's the battle for P2. Jeffrey Block leads the pack. He sometimes faster than the leader, sometimes a little slower, but he's got 2 cars in tow that will take advantage of any mistake.
So as we continue to see this battle develop for the final 2 podium spots here in this race, still very early on. So these racers, I think, are just going to start kind of dipping their toes into the water, seeing what works. Tim Taplin once again late on the brakes, super late on the brakes into turn number 4, not able to draw alongside, but certainly bringing the thunder here early with these late braking maneuvers. Just to quickly touch on this, you mentioned a driver whacking the bumps on the inside of the final 2 turns and turning their car into a cruise missile. Our very own RaceSpotTV colleague and PCA sim racing driver from the past, Mr. J.R. Gregory, I was covering a Radical SR10 race in the Radical Americas Championship about 2 years ago. We were running here. He screwed up his pit entry, lost it on turn in, and went for a trip off through the grass. His car had to have gone about 10 feet of air. I kid you not. It was one of the most majestic sights I've ever seen. And I think I nearly burst a blood vessel in my eye laughing that hard, seeing a Radical SR10 just soar up into the stratosphere like that. This is Bruce Froby with a moment once again through turn number 10. Howie, we were kind of joking about this before we went live, but the hairpins around here are kind of deadly.
I don't know any turn hasn't been deadly at this point. I think it really quite pushes this car to its absolute limit, and not only is it quite hard to make the passes, but it can be quite hard to just keep that car under you for a whole race distance. Big train here, led by the P7 of Jonathan Saportas. There's about 3 to 4 cars in tow here, all waiting for their potential opportunity. Of course, those being relatively rare, but imagine sending that many into one of the hairpins. Kevin Markuson looks like he was going to go for it. I think everyone behind wants to sort of tee it up in case the braking markers line up, but it's always a little bit easier said than done.
As you see, just a never-ending train of Porsche GT3 cars running back, essentially from Jeffrey Block all the way down through the field. It is not a huge gap between many of these racers. The only real breakaway is a top 5 compared to Robert Galis running in 6th, and even then, that's not the biggest margin that I've ever seen in my life, if I am being completely honest. The Sport is running right behind, has his own troubles. That was Andrew Hillman with his troubles through turn number 10, overshot the braking marker, ran wide on exit, and just lost out on P9 to John Kaplan, and may very well lose out on P10 to Dave Jones in the 313. He's all over the back of him. Let's see as they head their way out of the final turn onto the start-finish straightaway. Will Jones go for a move on Hillman? Will Hillman hold on to that spot? The draft in these cars isn't the most insane in the world, but this is a very fast section of the circuit. Hillman holds on to 10th for now. We jump up a little bit farther up the road to find Sportis and Keith Markuson still duking it out in this fight for 7th. That's a driver, a lap car running wide a little bit farther in front of them. Not entirely sure who that is there, but thankfully they get out of harm's way as they approach turn number 5. Taking a look at this replay, this is Patrick Auguer, who I think has been dealing with some severe connection issues throughout this. Already had that happen before the drop of the green flag, and it kind of looked like a brake pedal failure to me. It looked very, very deep in there, artificially deep.
Have you ever been jump scared by a turn? Because if I could name any turn in iRacing, I'd maybe call the turn 10 hairpin the jump scare. You're going cresting over a hill, and all of a sudden you have to brake hard as you go right back down. I'm never quite used to it. I'm very used to cars without ABS as well, so that gets you even worse around here. I've seen people get caught out all sorts of ways. This race is going to keep happening. I think we're going to keep seeing some unfortunate replays today. Got made it now 15 minutes through the race. I'm not precisely sure when the pit windows are, but I'm sure it'll be somewhere around halfway. Here's another Patrick Auguer. I think he has had a very hard day of it. He is 2 laps down. I mean, it could be hardware. It could just be getting out of the way. It could just be hating this place, which, you know what? I like it, but I understand.
This is a very sad spectacle currently. Just seeing him stop there in the grass, that is a depressing sight if ever I've seen it. I will say though, I've never been jump scared by a corner. I have been jump scared by a sock though, so I'm not entirely sure what's worse. Drankovic holds on to a 1.8 second gap at the current moment over Jeffrey Block in P2. Block, however, has his hands tied with the battle with himself, Vernon Messer, and Tim Taplin. I wonder who's going to snap here first. Is it going to be Messer going for a move on Block, Taplin going for a move on Messer, or maybe Taplin trying to go for a 2-for-1 one deal. He's been quick on the gun with those heavy braking zones, really just closing up the gap in the blink of an eye. What's going to happen here first? Because I feel like something has got to break here soon in this battle up towards the front. We're nearly a third of the way into this race now, and outside of a couple of drivers losing it earlier on, it has been fairly tame for, I would say, probably the past 10-ish minutes. So let's see what's going to happen here first.
You ask if drivers are going to make moves. Maybe the game plan is just either rely on the pit stop, rely on lap times, when you get yourself out of that traffic, and or just wait for people to make mistakes, because it does seem like everybody is eventually cracking under the pressure, and if you just don't do that, that's free position. Sometimes a race is just spent getting your laps done without error and hoping that the errors happen around you. Keeping an eye on that gap up front. It has been slightly shrinking. It's 1.6 seconds now, but not with true consistency either. Not in a way every single lap that means a pass is inevitable. Maybe look out by the end of the race to see whether those two cars are a little bit closer on the track. It's a storyline worth following, I think.
Yeah, and we've already seen plenty of storylines develop at this point, although we still have a lot more that are going to be uncovered. The pit cycle going to be huge. Now, usually here in these cars, we get to see the pit stops a little bit later on. With these GT3s, it has been delayed somewhat. Probably within the final 20 minutes will be when we see a vast majority of the field come down pit lane. You can maybe even boil that down to the final 15 minutes of this race. Fun fact, actually, I did mention this in the round one broadcast here for the challenge class 2 weeks ago here on RaceSpotTV at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Ken Eskridge ran that race without coming down pit lane, and I said at the time that he would be given a post-race penalty. That was incorrect. These drivers are not forced to come down pit lane by the rules. However, they're usually forced just by the other fuel restrictions. However, lots of different circumstances, a much thinner air in Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and fantastic fuel-saving opportunities led to him being able to run it completely without a pit stop from the start through to the end. So I do want to apologize for my misspeak last time out, and really applaud Ken Eskridge for being, I think, the only racer in the entirety of PCA here in Series 15 who was able to run a strategy call like that. Certainly in the other club and the challenge races that I covered here, it was the first and only driver who did that, and probably the first and only driver we'll see do that for the entirety of the season. Here, however, a bit more of a routine call. I mean, we're pretty much at sea level. You can see out there a lot of blue. That's the ocean right there. So we're nowhere near as high in elevation as we were in Mexico City last time out. So these racers have a different kettle of fish to have to worry about here in round number 2 of the championship. Looking at the battle for 10th, still intense between Hillman and Jones. Kaplan and Markussen are battling farther up the road, but I'm wondering whether or not we could draw our attention a little bit farther up the road, because the gaps at the front have really closed up. You know how I said that it was going to be that battle between Block, Messer, and Taplin that had something break in it soon? Well, they've broken something. They've broken that 1.5, nearly 2-second gap to Chris Drankovitz farther up the road. That's now a half a second. So your top 4, really your top 5, you could put them all under the same California king-size blanket.
Yeah, never mind me saying that would take time. I mean, what's the point of me here anyway? I mean, that just seemed to happen the moment I looked away, and all I wonder if there was maybe an issue up front or a mistake that usually loses your places, but in this case loses you that much time, because that's over a second in what feels like it's just been a couple laps, and now the battle is on. In terms of average laps, generally Block has been a little bit faster when there's been clear air between the two. Not with the sort of massive gulf that would let you force a pass, but now the sort of game is on, and when there's pressure for our leader again, that's where the mistakes might start to manifest again. One more mistake and it's sort of all over for you. You're going to lose that lead that you've held the whole race.
And, you know, actually, I'm looking into this in terms of the lap times that we've seen from Chris Drankovitz as of late. They haven't been painfully slow, but they've been consistently slower than what he was doing a little bit earlier on. Past 2 laps, we're coming up to the 3rd right now, so we'll get a better glimpse, but lap 13 and 14 were both in the 128, so 128.269 and then a 128.348. This time by was back into the 127s for the first time since lap 12, so Drankovic had some sort of major malfunction during that stage of the race, trying to figure out exactly what the deal was, because there's a lot of things that could have done it. Could have potentially been a slowdown, maybe just the same mistake 2 laps in a row. Don't usually see lap traffic play too much havoc here in these challenge class races, considering the field is somewhat smaller compared to the other PCA series, but that is still going to be something that we have to keep our eyes on, whether or not Chris Drankovic trying to extend that gap early, maybe burnt up his stuff a little bit too early, jumped the gun slightly. He may be struggling for the rest of this stint.
Meanwhile, I'm keeping an eye on the second battle at the bottom of our screen, where Keith Markson really looks like he wants to get that move on at this point. This will be a battle for P7 on the grid. And even though these drivers are a little less close, they do seem to get a little bit tighter to each other in the heavy braking hairpins. And, I mean, Chris Drankovic has just run away again, by the way. 7 times, 8 times, I saw a little flicker in 9. Could be a whole second, so maybe it was just 1 or 2 bad laps, and that pressure just encouraged him to push, and go again. It's no longer a battle for first. It's a battle for second again.
So seeing some seesawing going on at the front of the field, trusting that opening part of that sentence 5 times fast. We got the split view though. Jeffrey Block trying to hold off the challenge from the likes of Vernon Messer and Tim Taplin right behind him in that battle for second. This has been intense for quite some time when we said that something was maybe going to break here soon. I wonder if you're Vernon Messer, are you going to look at Jeffrey Block and think, okay, I don't have the confidence that you can get a move done on Chris Drankovic and catch up to him consistently, although it has come down by about 0.6 of a second, so I think it is seesawing still at the front. But if you're Vernon Messer, at least if I were Vernon Messer, I would maybe not actually push Jeffrey Block along. I think the race stewards would probably have a look at that if that were to come to pass. But if I were Vernon Messer, I'd probably say, let's speed up the process here. Let's get something rolling.
It's train after train after train, and as predicted, forcing the passing is difficult, but keeping pressure on and forcing mistakes and maybe getting an undercut or overcut when the clean air eventually opens up later in this race could be a factor. There's Rob Gerwing. Not seen a spin in a while, but they still seem to be coming back on the menu. Very easy to overload GT3 tyres on a track like this. It's almost putting them under constant pressure every single lap. And as we were talking about, Jeffrey Block losing distance, he's right back on the bumper of our leader again.
Yeah, and this is a lot closer this time around. I think Drankovic is just consistently losing time in the first sector. Will Block try and go for the move heading into turn number 4? We'll have to find out. Drankovic checking up a little bit through the turn, but Block having to do so as well. The dirty air we got to talk about. I know it's a dirty word in racing terms, but you got to mention it here with these GT3s. They punch a big hole in the air, and if you lose out on the time, you're going to be done for. Block lost out on time through 2, and he loses out on P2 to Vernon Messer.
Looks like Block had a little bit of a slide on exit, was able to save the car, but that's all of the momentum practically ruined. Other passes on the grid as well. That's Hillman getting past Dave Jones for the 10th position on the track. Starting to see more and more overtakes come out, but that last pass from Messer, that was a mistake that caused it, and Block tries to go for it, and that's too much into the tyres, and that's going to cost him even more. Down and down. 5th is going to be where he settles after that. That front end really losing it, and no, that's even more.
Yeah, that's a problem. As soon as you go off the circuit, the tires are going to take quite a long time before they want to cooperate with you again. So Jeffrey Block, who thought that he had a good shot of maybe jumping into the race lead, is now slotted all the way down in P8. Pit stop from Tim Taplin. That is very, very, very early. I wonder if he maybe had some contact here. No, does not look like it. That is bizarre to see him come into the pits that soon. We mentioned this earlier on. I'll mention it once again to those tuning into the series for the first time. Here in Series 15 with these Porsche GT3 cars, usually see the pit stops within the final 20 minutes, not short of the halfway mark. I'm not sure what Tim Taplin is cooking here, but we'll have to find out whether he makes a 5-star, just Gordon Ramsay-esque 3-star Michelin dish, or whether or not he's going to burn down the kitchen.
Well, in a track like this, you might just want to force a stop as soon as you can to get out of traffic. Big calamity into that hairpin. That's Andrew Hillman is the biggest victim of it all, but there was another pass up ahead at the same time. So I was saying there are some tracks, this one comes to mind, but tracks like Brands Hatch or another where if you're really, really fast and you just can't get past someone, get that clean air as soon as possible and hope all those positions come back to you. If this is the very beginning of what the possible window is, that could be a strategy play. We'll see how much he climbs back up as a result of that. With Kevin Markson going down those sweeping hills into the second half. And Jeffrey Block, he is fast. He's got places to make back, but it's not easy to force those, and his attempt at forcing them has cost him significantly already this race.
Yeah, through the 25 drivers that took the green flag, I don't think there's a whole lot of them that have been completely unscathed from Phillip Island thus far. So I have a feeling that list is probably going to grow between now and the checkered flag. After all, we still have 31.5 minutes left to go here in this race. We still look at the battling going up a little bit farther up the road. This is Robert Gallus, Jonathan Sesportis, and John Kaplan. This is the fight for fourth at the present moment with some more battling going on behind them. It's Jeffrey Block, Keith Marcus, and Dave Jones, and Leon Snyman. Snyman, who's running strong towards the start of the race, just got a move put on Dave Jones after Jones went very deep into turn number 4. That's a spot gain for him. Very easily said and done for Snyman. Jones now gonna have to try and pull off those tires, and it looks like there's maybe a little bit of front end damage on that 313 car as well. So look at the 670 of Joseph Birkenstock to maybe close up and overtake to punch his way into the top 10.
And Block did make it through Markson, because Markson went wide, was able to sort of save it in time not to lose more places, but that was one of those places made up, and Block slowly started to climb, but that wasn't the fourth pass. That was a mistake being capitalized upon. Our P5 driver here, Jonathan Sesportis, mostly, I think, had a peaceful run for some time. I don't see some of the lap times start to come down across the field, so drivers are starting to lose a little bit of it. I know that the Porsche does become a little less predictable when the fuel starts to run dry on it. Can affect the weight balance of the car significantly, and we've seen the weight balance of this car affect a lot of drivers through the turns already, so could also be a factor. Look at that gravel across the track. That's someone that is well and truly gone.
Yeah, it's Bruce Froby in the 130 car. This is off through turn number 1 and 2, off into the gravel trap. He's going to go very deep through the turn. That gravel trap is meant to stop a motorcycle. Lickety split! You can tell that was a close quarters moment because I briefly turned 14 again there. Oh, I may have to take a cough drop after that.
In addition, I mean, that's just left a lovely little oil slick out across the track in order for everybody that comes across a high-speed corner to encounter as a fun surprise. Just keeping track of some messages from race control. We've heard there've been 4X incidents with the 389, 076, and 313. No penalties for any of them. So currently no penalties on the road. There really hasn't been much car-to-car contact here. There's been a lot of incidents and still not really much in the way of damage. There's Vernon Messier making a fairly easy pass. It's all about people just losing it under their own control.
Yeah, I believe Messer was...
That was the first 4X in 29 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where I'm wondering whether or not these racers will ever want to see Phillip Island again once this race is said and done. I would probably say not. That was Vernon Messer. I was going to say that he was one of the latest racers to run into some sort of difficulties, and sure enough, that's what happened, and that has actually allowed Brad Dunn to jump his way up into second here in this race. You know, every single time we talk about a racer doing well here in the PCA Challenge class, we talk about consistency and just keeping your head screwed firmly onto your shoulders. Brad Dunn, after starting in 6th, may have thought that he was down for the count, but now he's in P2 past the halfway mark. Still keeping an eye on these battles as we get further along in this race, seeing more drivers make that decision to come down pit lane. Harpreet Beth was the latest just a few moments ago, but the racers that we have seen come down pit lane, with maybe the exception of Taplin, who I'm still kind of scratching my head to figure out exactly why he went for that pit call. But right now, everybody else who is coming into the pits is trying to do so just to see what they can do to make it work, as that's John Kaplan with a move into turn number 4, and that looks potentially close to contact.
I think there was contact from my view. Quite the send to get moves past, and we are seeing more and more pit stops kick off now. Jeffrey blocks in the pit lane now. Some of these drivers trying to get out of this absolute gaggle side by side with on the track. This is Mux and I think that's Snyman just behind. No, it's Supportas. Lots of drivers so close, they're swapping around. Oh, Supportas almost thinks I'll do it myself as well. That inside covered off very, very, very well.
Yeah, if you put on a good defensive drive around this race track, you can hold on to a place no matter what kind of pace that you have. And I think we've seen some racers know exactly where to position their cars and maybe draw some slight moments of insanity out of the competitors right behind them. I know I've done that to plenty of people. I've had that be done to me. I think everybody has had both sides of that go on at some point in their iRacing career, as we continue to see these battles going on out there on the racetrack. Marcuson kind of on an island of his own for now, although John Kaplan is only 7/10 of a second farther up the road. He's only got about 9/10 of a second between himself and Jonathan Sasportas. It certainly feels a bit more broken up for Marcuson than it does for Kaplan, as he has a pretty all right view of Robert Gales holding on to the P4 spot at the present moment. This will be a battle to keep our eyes on, as will the fight between Brad Dunn and Vernon Messer, which is still they're not side by side yet. They haven't closed up the gap too much, but it's still around about 3/4 of a second, which, considering how wild this race has been, a 7/10 of a second gap could disappear in the blink of an eye.
There really has only been one constant this race, and it's been Chris Jankovic just being able to run away from the start and see everything, not even see, but just know of everything bad happening behind him. That gap is now ballooned out again, and he's enjoying running his own laps. Biggest gap on the track is actually the one in front of Galata, so you know, it's about not the biggest on the whole track as a pit stop, so one of the biggest on the field. Make it like that. It's that battle for P2 that could spice up. Here's Jeffrey block again. It's so easy to understeer. This is what's happening. It's just carrying a bit too much speed at a track where the brake markers aren't really defined, and you have to get so much practice. If you're used to tracks with defined terms, this one just throws you for an absolute loop because you don't really know where to slow, and all of a sudden you're not ready.
And there are some points in time around this racetrack. I don't say this out of malice. I say it with love because it's something that makes this racetrack unique. But there are points where you can tell that it is designed primarily for motorcycles. You can tell the motorcycles race around here and race around here quite well. The long sweeping bends, the runoff area. I mean, I'm always a fan of grass and gravel runoff area myself, but whenever I'm behind the wheel, that's not going to be a appetizing prospect going off the circuits with a racing surface like this. So these competitors have gotten quite familiar with the runoff area, not as much as they would probably want to. They'd want to be completely unfamiliar with it, but hey, with a narrow racetrack like this and the little room for error that you've got, sometimes accidents can happen. We're looking at a battle, though. This is Brad Dunn and Vernon Messer. This gap has continued to fluctuate. It's fluctuated quite a lot just in this little blibber blabber from me. Went down from about 0.8 of a second where it is right now, down to 0.2, and now it's ballooned out once again as they head their way off to the final sector. That's Lisa Eskridge slow on the inside of turn number 11, but Brad Dunn still the one punching the hole in the air, with Chris Drankovic now holding on to a 2.5 second margin. That's just about the biggest gap that we have seen thus far in this race, as here's a replay of Lisa Eskridge going way deep into turn number 10 and giving the grass runoff area a visit.
Is Joshua Birkenstock as well. He had an incident that was quite a big one, and you talked about the Lego car being strong earlier on. He has taken quite the shock with that one, but it certainly did keep his front bumper in one piece, so you could call that strong. We are in pit cycle mode now. A lot of drivers taking it as I speak. There's Holland, there's Birkenstock, there's Saportas, and there's Leon Snyman. There's been a few in the last few laps as well. We've had Dave Jones, you've had James Legault. We have a few drivers making a slightly treacherous exit there and re-entry onto the track. It's a treacherous entry, it's a treacherous pit exit. You really just jump right back onto the racing line at low speed. It can catch you. But now we're going to see drivers out of position for a bit and then return. There's the hard shock from Birkenstock, the biggest impact of this race. We did keep the front bumper, but that might need some repairing in the pits.
If that bumper just randomly, inexplicably flew off the car once he had rejoined the racetrack and got back up to racing speeds, my saying of a piece of bodywork popping off like a misshapen leg can now finally be fulfilled. The prophecy has been fulfilled. This is where my iRacing broadcasting career has officially peaked. Drankovic now coming down pit lane. Fascinating now to see a race leader come into the pits. We were expecting pit stops later than this, but in the chaos that we have seen thus far, I think everybody just wants to try and make it to the end without any further incident. Drankovic running it late to hit the brakes, drop the anchors to get into his pit stall, but he hits his marks roundabout perfectly, revving the engine right now to try and rejoin. Will he be able to do it without any further incident? Will he get a good stop? Looking now, 14, 15, 16 seconds stopped in the pit stall. We'll have to see how that works out for him, and everybody else in the field. We'll get to see Markussen, Kaplan, and Hillman down with their pit stops right now. Kaplan ran about the same time, a little bit more. Keith Markussen a heck of a lot more, and Andrew Hillman even more than that. So Drankovic running it quite short on the pit stops, at least compared to the others who came into the pits at the exact same time.
And while you were studying the pit stops, we've had almost a gallery of calamity, whether you're entering the corner, in the middle of the corner, or exiting the corner. There's basically a way Phillip Island can get to you. Put that on the tourism poster. I'm sure you'll get all the visitors in the world. Most of the pit cycle wasn't that complete. Our top 3 have not stopped, so they are the 3 drivers are mostly out of place, and we've come out with some close battles again. Currently for 6th, I think this will be 4th, although my maths are usually bad. We have Jonathan Sasportas behind and Tim Taplin all in for this free car chase. Here's another one. Oftentimes when I see a replay come up, I think I know what's about to happen. That's a tough understeer though. At least those ones are better than the full spins, as long as you can make it back to the track without spinning it, which we've seen a few times.
Yeah, the only downside with a moment like that is because you went off through the gravel trap, your tires are going to be coated with gravel for the next 50,000 years, and your car is going to weigh about 6 tons because of all the gravel you brought on. Vernon Messer trying to destroy the valve trains in his engine as he revs it to try and dump the clutch and hit the fast lane once again. He's going to exit out. Decent stop, but he will get jumped by Drankovic. However, the gap isn't too terribly massive. We'll have to see in about a half a lap's time once Messer is a bit more up to temperature and we get to see some representative pace, but a little under 3 seconds currently. That's not too far away from what it was before the pit stops. Definitely a bit of time gained in the case of Drankovic, but nothing too major. As look at this, that's Hillman sweeping around the outside of Robert Gallus, who's coming out of the pits himself. He slides through turn number 2, and that's how quickly things can go wrong.
I've been trying to do some maths, good old commentator math, and I'm just thinking about where Brad Dunn might end up. He's entering the pit lane now. He was about 36 ahead. It's about 37 on a pit stop. If this pit stop goes to plan, there's a chance that Brad Dunn could be quite close to that lead. Watch the producer math, or even the commentator math, just go terribly, terribly wrong, but I'm going to keep an eye on those two cars as they get close to racing the pit lane, because Dunn could make himself a part of this battle. Last of the major stoppers, so he's chosen to overcut the field. It works for me in IMSA, so it's got to work here in some way. Chris Drankovic, though, will be expected to inherit the lead of this race, and see what that gap is like with next challenger at the end.
So Brad Dunn, 16.6 seconds, stopped in the pit stall. How did he exit out in front of Drankovic? You can see that gap is closing. I think Dunn may have gone the apex to turn number 1 first, but Drankovic is going to be right there to try and pounce. Looking at this fight, yes, there it is. Brad Dunn was able to jump in front, but Drankovic going to have the advantage of some warmer tires. He's going to have the juices flowing. Will he go for a move into turn number 4? This is tough. You got 2 racers who are trying to grab a win. One driver with already the first checkered flag of the season, another trying to round off what has been a brilliant night thus far. The both of them probably having championship aspirations too. I think they're thinking about the percentages early. Even though we haven't even hit the first quarter of the season being done and dusted, we still have a quarter of this race left to go. Drankovic doesn't go for it into turn number 4 and loses out on a bit of time now, 3/4 of a second the gap between Dunn and Drankovic. But well done to Brad Dunn, executing that pit stop perfectly. He's now going to be the one punching the hole in the air. He's the hole punch of the field.
And I've got to cover my behind, but also I was very curious as to how that really happened. I estimate 37 seconds in the pit lane, and then Brad Dunn managed to save a second in the lane on every other driver. Not in the box either. Identical box times pretty much to the car behind, but saving a second in the lane means hitting your marks on the entry and exit so much better that he's beaten expectations, and he's managed to beat his biggest challenger out onto the track. We now have a duel for the win, because Chris Drankovic, he's been leading this whole race, and he's got to get the move done on track.
So this will be the first time that Drankovic has had to deal with dirty air throughout the night. For the most part in the race, he was the hole punch. He was a driver getting the clean air, enjoying all of the downforce in the world. Now, however, we got to figure out whether or not that 009 car is just quick by itself or just generally quick. Brad Dunn, meanwhile, he had to fight back through the field a couple of times in the last round of the season at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. So if he can make this work, that would be golden for him. About a half a second the gap as they head their way off through turn number 6, seeing some pit stops continue on with the likes of Sean Bailey and Peter Portanova. They're down in 21st and 22nd right now. Portanova stopped in the stall for 1 minute and 2 seconds. You don't need to be a rocket surgeon to know that that is not ideal. Brad Dunn, though, still your race leader over Drankovic. Keeping an eye on this gap as it continues to fluctuate, actually getting double view, following it from the outsider's perspective and running on board with Drankovic, getting a fantastic view of the back of the 241 car as they head their way out of turn number 11 through 12 right now. You can see that gap closing up. It was a half a second not too long ago. You can make that 3/10 now. Dunn trying to break that drift. Drankovic right there to try and pounce this. Well, a driver coming out of the pits right in front. That may be advantage Drankovic, but he can't close up the gap enough. He's going to be slotted in P2. They finally get dealt with that car. That's Sean Bailey and the 999 machine that they have to worry about there. Drankovic, though, still running in second.
Drankovic wants this. You could tell from the body language of that car and the way it just gets close in every single major braking zone. He's been consistently the fastest of the race. He's held off threats, but he hasn't had to pass anyone for it all. That's a very, very rough hairpin for Brad Dunn, but then an exit for Drankovic that almost gives up some of that advantage. Both drivers are making errors here that mean that it could just go either way. Who's going to make the next biggest one that throws this race?
And if there's one word, one kind of situation that we have seen wreak havoc for these competitors thus far here at Phillip Island tonight. It's been errors, self-inflicted errors, but errors nonetheless. We've seen veterans make mistakes. We've seen rookies make mistakes. Drivers that were running quick last time out at Mexico City making mistakes. Drivers who showed some speed here making mistakes. It has been an... I think the best way I could to describe it, frankly, is this racetrack has taken no prisoners. And these racers, I think, are starting to realize that, which is why they're taking more of a cavalier attitude towards it. They need to get these moves done lickety-split. The time is running out, and these competitors are fully aware of that.
Not going to be too many laps out down the track, around 10, or maybe even less than. That's... if you really think there's too big overtaking spots on the track, that makes 20 or fewer attempts at the hairpins. Both hairpins were messed up last time. Now Chris Drankovic is going to try that outside. It's not always a very easy line, and he has to check up on the exit in order to avoid... I don't really know what he was avoiding, but I think maybe the line just wasn't ideal. Tightens up as we start to head up the hill. How hard is he going to send it into the next one, or is he going to be patient and keep waiting and try again? Is it just going to be a game of pressure boiling over for one of the two?
I very much so think it could be the case. We see Brad Dunn trip up a little bit through turn number 9. This gives Drankovic the opportunity to go for it down the inside to turn number 10. Contact made between the two. Dunn parking the bus through 11, but Drankovic is there to pounce now. What happened to Dunn? Similar shades to what we saw actually take him out of contention earlier on in this race when he ran wide through 2, hit the gravel, hit the grass. That nearly happened once again through 9. This time, however, he holds on to that top spot, but Drankovic is right there to pounce. This is going to be just a game of pressure for the both of them. Jenga. I think it is Jenga being played at about 150 miles an hour with race cars instead of wood blocks. You're just going to try and force the other racer around you into a situation that they simply cannot recover from, as that's the replay of where it nearly ended in tears for the both of them.
Even the mistakes are hard to capitalize on around here unless they're like catastrophic. If somebody just misses a marker but they stay on the track, you actually don't really have the momentum or pace to get back around them because the exits of both those hairpins are just so awkward. So really, a mistake has to be significant, far bigger than the ones we've been seeing escalate so far, or else you're just not getting past. How do you pass someone on this track without something serious happening around you? It just does seem like it's been an impossible task.
It has been very tricky for racers to just seize the opportunity. We saw that with Drankovic and Dunn. We saw it a bit earlier on in this race. Hey, even the drivers who went off the circuit, now a lot of them did lose out on a boatload of time, but even the ones who just had a brief off-track excursion, it could have been a heck of a lot worse for them. This racetrack is narrow, it is small, it is old school and tiny. This track was built originally back in the 50s, but these modern GT3 machines running around here make it look like a giant machine. Drankovic thought about going for the move into turn number 1, but he thought better of it. But the gap now is teetering around that 0.2 of a second barrier, and it is teetering around there consistently too. Drankovic wants to go for the move around the outside through turn number 2. I don't think so. That was going to end one way, and that is poorly. And Drankovic, I think, realized that right as he was trying to go for it, and that's the reason why the gap has ballooned. It has doubled in the span of just a couple of moments' time. Done. Now the one with all the cars, but he runs wide through 4, cuts it back on exit, but Drankovic is going to be there. He goes for the move nearly down the inside into turn number 6. This is Titanic stuff as we now enter the final 10 minutes.
Drankovic has to back out of every attempt because if he forced it any more in there, he's spinning around Brad Dunn's car and then doesn't get to really keep that win. Like, there's just no space being given. The opportunities aren't being opened, and if they're not opened, you are not taking. I have seen 1 or 2 passes down the start-finish straight in this race if you have a significant run. If these last few corners here go very, very well for you, you can get that working, but they've been rare and they've hardly really been noticed. I don't think it's going to be the case this time around, meaning we get to repeat the cycle, I think, around here.
So the cycle continues. Brad Dunn holding on to that race lead. Drankovic going for the move into turn number 1, not close enough to make it fully work, but we're starting to see these moves maybe get a bit more desperate in the case of Chris Drankovic. You got to think of the mental side of things as well. Drankovic, who started this race from the pole position, led throughout until the pit cycle. He's maybe feeling a little bit demoralized, very much so under pressure, and just desperate to try and jump back into the race lead, as this is Peter Portanova diving down on the inside. This is heading, oh my goodness gracious, that is the most amount of airtime I've ever seen a Porsche GT3 car get.
I know there are some people that try to find all of the jumps in iRacing. I didn't know about the Phillip Island jump. This person may not have tried to find it, but he's shown me history right there. That is, I might have to use that. Yeah, I mean,
that is majestic. That is majestic. That is fantastic to see. I mean, granted, we're seeing a $1 million race car basically get turned into sheet metal linguini, but the point remains that is absolutely awesome. I don't care who you are, seeing a race car get crunched is almost kind of cool. To break out the redneck accent for that. He's in the pits, has been for the past 2.5 minutes. Gee, I wonder why. Vernon Messer, though, is only 2 seconds off of these drivers. You know, I was going to mention this not too long ago. If these drivers between Dunn and Drankovic really battle it out too hard, Vernon Messer, if these two drivers crash, he's going to be the one taking the race lead. And even if not, if they start chasing each other's tails a bit too much and slow themselves down as if they have anchors tied around their if they have anchors tied around their ankles, as I get my tongue wrapped around my teeth 16 times there, if Vernon Messer just keeps his nose to the grindstone, he could play spoiler in this fight.
His laps have been a little bit faster. They've not been substantially faster. I would have to expect an incident to actually get him up ahead, but if there's an incident that loses 2 seconds, which absolutely can happen, that's the beginning of the end, really, isn't it? Now half a second between these two. It compresses and it opens up again, and it compresses and it opens up again. Don't know if Drankovic is going to get more desperate or whether he's just sort of eventually going to resign himself to this, because Brad Dunn is holding those inside lines excellently every time he can, just not giving that window in at all.
No, that's going to be a shot, though. Dunn runs wide through turn number 11 into 12. This is heading on to that massively long start-finish straightaway, and Drankovic has closed up that gap to 0.3 of a second. This is not the smallest gap we've seen these two racers have heading down the start-finish straightaway, but the run really looks like it's going the way of Drankovic. He doesn't go for the move into turn number 1, but Dunn is feeling the pressure. He ran it off the track really high on the curb. This is the best shot that Chris Drankovic has had to take the race lead once again. Dunn trying to defend his honor and go for back-to-back wins to get Series 15 of the PCA Challenge class up and rolling, but he has got a test on his hands to try and hold on to this spot. Not only does he have Drankovic, not only does he have to contend with the challenging racetrack that has caught at pretty much everybody, Vernon Messer is there. You can see that number 56 car now firmly in the back of shots. He is 1.5 seconds off the back of Chris Drankovic in P2. One small little flare up of this battle, and this 2-car fight can turn into a 3-car scrap, but just like that.
Do you think someone is going to overstep the line here, Ron? I'm very, very curious. I'm not sure whether it's going to happen, or do you even think the pass can be forced? I mean, it's going to become a game of playing chicken, really. There is more going on in the back of the pack. We promised you that, Leon Steinman, trying to make his way around 2 cars. 2 little errors up ahead. They can give you the momentum. Once you're on the outside line, you do have a good lot of speed, and then you get a good line into the hairpin. That's going to help get that pass cleaned up. There are battles everywhere to be seen still, and still a few incidents and errors that may be caught up and around. It's been a busy day here at Phillip Island. Probably one that, as you've said, some of the drivers are looking forward to leaving.
Yeah, I think the list of drivers excited to see Phillip Island again on whatever racing calendar they race in is probably going to be quite minuscule once we leave this event here today. James Legault has made an entrance into the pits right towards the end. This is for a black flag, so this is not because of any sort of pit strategy call. Waiting to see it was actually a contact with himself on the 462 that caused this black flag to be issued, the 462 of Carl Bess. So that is going to be a drive-through, pretty severe drive-through at that as well. That does pack a mighty punch here at Phillip Island, but one driver who's been sucker punched out of the fight for the win is Drankovitz. 1.3 seconds now the gap between himself and Brad Dunn after having a good shot to maybe grab the W. It looks like it has fallen apart. In the meantime, this battle with Taplin and Steinman is still close for 8th. It looks like Taplin got to hold on to that spot for now, but no, Drankovitz, I think he's going to have to worry about Vernon Messer before he's going to start to worry about Brad Dunn again.
I'm trying to work out if something happened to him, and I went back myself and I didn't see anything. He just genuinely just pace dropped off a cliff, and now Brad Dunn in control, much like Drankovitz was this whole time. I mean, that pit entry and exits could have to be asked about. Like, that was the difference maker of the whole race. Here's the incident with Carl Bess, bit of a dive bomb as the stewards called it, and that was where the black flag was given out. Really not seeing much car contact, especially only two times stewards have had to weigh in on anything on the track. So certainly it hasn't been a race of those sorts of incidents. A race of these sorts of incidents, though. Dave Jones with another. Quite frankly, our producers having to work overtime just finding all of the incidents around the track. I mean, certainly you never run out of content.
Yeah, I do feel bad in some degree for Ramiro in the production truck. He has to be like a chameleon looking at 16 different things at once. I think there may be something else that he has to take a look at, because I could just hear in the corner of my ear, that's not a phrase, that's exactly what I was going to mention. A driver off the track heading off through turn number 9. I could hear the trip across the gravel. Somebody went off the circuit. I heard it, and then I saw it, and that right there was all the confirmation that I needed. This has been a tough race for all the 25 drivers out there. Of the 25 drivers that started this race, I think we're probably down to single digits of racers who haven't had some sort of drama go on here. Brad Dunn had drama in the early stages. He looks to be on track for a win. Chris Drankovitz has had his off-track excursions too, so too has Vernon Messer. This is one of those races where the drivers pick up the incident points the most. We don't really talk about it on a race-by-race basis. See, the incident points do get tallied throughout the season, but forget the incident points. We have 2 laps left to go, and Drankovitz somehow closed up that gap by about 7 or 8 tenths of a second in about 1 turn alone. What has happened to Brad Dunn? Is his car being powered with milk, or is Drankovitz turning on the hyperjets? Even with a little bit of front-end damage, Drankovitz looking to peak at the right time.
This has been a very hard to explain race. This was the incident that you heard and saw, by the way. It was Rob going off the track. But I mean, we really have just been over and over and over again seeing gaps disappear and then form back up like you never expect. I think it's just such a hard track, and it's just such a hard one to be consistent in. We're expecting the white flag this time around, as we have a few turns to go next time. By Chris Drankovitz, though, wants to make it around the outside, but yet can't make it around the outside. Not very easily. If there's no run down the start-finish straight, he's going to have one more chance around this track. It has been a roller coaster, and not just because the track goes up and down, but also because it's been a race that's been impossible to predict.
Yeah, and some of these drivers are going to be leaving this event with a little bit of whiplash, but the white flag in the air, one more lap of racing action. Brad Dunn takes the white with about 3.5 tenths of a second, the gap between himself and Drankovitz, but he once again has an awkward run through the first 2 turns. I'm not seeing a level of confidence from that 241 car. Frankly, I haven't really seen too much confidence from anybody in this field. Even Chris Drankovitz, when he was leading in the early stages after starting from the pole, didn't look like he was too confident in the way his car was running around this racetrack either. He goes for the dive, though, on the outside into turn number 4. Switches back to the inside, though, on corner exit. Dunn gonna have to cover it off. Look at Vernon Messer right there to Pence in case these two come to blows, but Drankovic is right there, nearly runs into the bumper as they head their way through 6 into 7 through the middle sector, the quick sector of this lap. It's time running out for Drankovic. It's time running out for Brad Dunn. It's music to the ears of Dunn, who only has a few more turns left to go, but Drankovic may start to get a little bit desperate. Will he go for the move into turn number 10? Dunn covers off the inside, but he sweeps it to the inside line. Does Drankovic around the outside through turn number 10? Contact made. They're going to come to blows. Look at Vernon Messer go off the track. Brad Dunn going to come away with the W, but I think Race Control is going to have to take a look at 15 different angles of that. Brad Dunn is going to win in the most dramatic circumstances here at Phillip Island. What a finish.
I was expecting maybe some desperate move, maybe not last lap contact. I mean, that's going to be hard to call from a million angles. I've tried watching from above and I barely have an idea as to what's going to happen there. It's certainly going to make the interviews interesting. That'll be fun.
I am genuinely curious as to how Race Control may see that. I'll be honest, I don't think I don't think the final finishing order that we'll show you here is going to be the total one, but a lot of different circumstances playing at that, I will say. Race Control, a thankless job in sim racing as somebody who did it for many, many moons himself. Had that lap car a little bit farther up the road, which probably influenced Brad Dunn in positioning his car where he did. Certainly kind of influenced the way that Chris Drankovic positioned his car as well. Just a very unfortunate series of circumstances, and Drankovic a little bit awkward there on the regional, nearly wiping out John Kaplan, who walked away with the podium at the end of this. This is a shot with Brad Dunn, and you know, I'll be honest, Howie, I think with that lap card being so unpredictable, that may be the wild card that gives Brad Dunn the W.
I'm not sure Brad Dunn has anywhere really to go here. I mean, like, you hate to call a last turn incident as something like a racing incident. I don't see another way right now from my view. I'm not a steward. It's always controversial saying these things as commentators. We'll see what happens. But, I mean, it doesn't look like anyone really egregiously oversteps a line there. It was the lap car causing a little bit of chaos.
And you know, when I was in Race Control, we were always taught that when you give a penalty, it needs to be, it's like in the court of law, guilty with beyond a reasonable doubt. I think there's a reasonable doubt that any of the racers involved in that had 100% the other blame in that incident. I think it was just a series of unfortunate events that transpired to lead to that happening. It's a shame. I'm sure Brad Dunn did not want to win this race in that fashion. I think Race Control will probably have a chat with all of those drivers, and we will, of course, keep you up to date as to any calls that may come through. But here are your unofficial provisional results here after 41 laps of racing action here at Phillip Island tonight. Brad Dunn walks away with the W. Vernon Messer is in P2. If there is a penalty, it would be Messer grabbing his first win of the season. John Kaplan rounds out your podium in third, finishing on the podium no matter what the circumstances are. Keith Markison inherits a fourth at the end of it. Chris Drankovic in P5. Jonathan Sesportis finishes this race in sixth, with Andrew Hillman, Leon Snyman, Tim Taplin, and Adam Holland rounding out your top 10.
Further behind, 24 cars made the start and pretty much all made the finish. Make that 25. Robert Gallagher finishes 11th ahead of Joseph Birkenstock, Dave Jones, Jeffrey Block, Harpit Bath, Kenneth Eskridge, James Legault, Rob Gerwing, Carl Bess, and Jack Stevenson. A lot of the drivers probably spinning a lot today.
Yeah, that's just a few more drivers. It's Sean Bailey, Bruce Froby, Peter Portanovo with some amazing aerial acrobatics, Lisa Eskridge with some drama a bit earlier on, and Patrick Aguirre with some drama as well. Shout out to Keith Markison with the fastest lap on lap 13. Lucky lap 13. Proved to be a very lucky one for him indeed. But let's have a chat with some of these racers. I think we're going to do this in finishing order, and of course we will keep you up to date as to how things work out at the very end of this. So we will start by having a chat with Brad Dunn to kind of ask his side of things in this matter. Brad Dunn now joining us here in the broadcast booth. Brad, welcome in. It looks like it may be your second win in a row to get this season up and rolling, but of course that last lap incident may get reviewed. I want to ask you though about the race itself, like the race before then, because obviously we'll probably talk about the last lap drama a bit later on in this interview, but overall it was a very solid race for you, making your way up through the field after some drama a bit earlier on, a masterful pit call, and a thrilling battle right towards the end as well.
Hats off to Chris. He led the whole race until the pit stop, and I just happened to get a little bit faster and came out. We had practiced recently where I was battling somebody right coming out of the pit, and it's a lot of fun. And that last lap, I don't know. I mean, I just reviewed it. It looks like that was my fault, but we'll wait and see what they say.
Yeah, I will say there's a lot of different circumstances, at least from my personal perspective, that kind of played into that lap car farther up the road. I did race control for a long period of time myself, but of course, my job is just to talk about the stuff going on out there on the racetrack that we show on the broadcast, and we'll have to wait for the word from race control about that. Don't want to ask you, actually, instead of asking about the incident, because I think there's more interesting things to discuss here. The pit entry and exit, we noticed on the pit stops, you were able to gain a second on pit entry and exit alone. That was very impressive. How were you able to do that? Was it just mastery of nailing the brakes on exit and entry? How did that work out for you? Because that was really what put you in that position to battle for the win in the first place.
So I've typically been going like pretty hot into the pits, and able to just really get on the brakes right at the end and bring it down. And I actually probably, I hit the green probably another, like 20 or 30 feet before the cones. So it's worked out pretty well. We've done a lot of practice sessions with pit stops, and that's really helped. I think I jumped somebody the other night, or maybe two people the other night on the pit.
Yeah, so that was really impressive in the mid portion of this race. Getting yourself involved in that battle in quite the way. Do want to ask you though about the next round of the championship, heading to a track that is kind of similar to this in an odd sense, with a lot of high-speed turns and a boatload of challenge. Sebring for round number 3 of the championship in 2 weeks' time. What are your thoughts heading there?
Well, first off, I might not be able to drive it because I might be out of town, and I'll be out of town like the whole week before that, so not going to get a lot of practice in. But plans might change, and I might get back just in time to race. I haven't driven it very much at all, so that's the thing to get on this weekend and sort of see where I am and get it down to where I'm happy.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of practice making perfect, but whether we see you out there on the racetrack in 2 weeks' time or not, Brad, we look forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack at some point soon, and thank you very much for stopping to have a chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for everything. Thanks for everybody that puts their time and effort into this. It's really amazing. You all have a good night.
And I hope you do as well. That right there was Brad Dunn, our race winner here tonight, and we will still be keeping you posted as to whether we hear anything about any race control calls in that or not. We have yet to hear anything, but Howie, I'll pass the mic off to you to have a chat with our P2 finisher, Vernon Messer, who had a front row seat to all the drama a little bit later on in this event.
Good evening, Vernon. You can divide this field up very much into drivers that had a high incident count and drivers that had a low incident count. You weren't the lowest, but you were one of those that kept it on the track for a lot of the race. Talk through what it's like getting around this place. It did not look easy.
Yeah, I don't know if I've grown to love this track or not. That turn 2 corner, I just could not get it right. But it was fun nonetheless. A bunch of good drivers out there, and chasing down the leaders at the end was a good deal of fun as well.
seems quite difficult to really pass others around here. I mean, I would say you're in the right time and right place to claim a P2 on the line, because for the rest of it, it was very, very hard to really get around other cars. Was there any point where you think people just sort of thought, I'm not going to try this anymore, or were you trying to force it all race?
I tried to get as close as possible, but I never really was right on someone's rear end for a good amount of time. And short of a dive bomb, it's just really hard to get around people.
Moving on to the rest of the schedule, I think the tracks mostly become a little bit easier from out here, but what coming up are you really looking forward to hitting?
I don't have the schedule committed to memory. I know Sebring's coming up, which is always fun and completely different, track. Very rough and tight as well, but I think there might be a few more passing opportunities on that track, so we'll see how it goes. I've got to catch up to Brad at some point, though. If I keep finishing behind him, it's not going to work out too well for me, I guess.
Master Ball, you got any other thank yous or shout outs, of course, at the end of this interview?
Just my best to my wife, Cindy, and my boys, Derek and Ian, for putting up with my little hobby I've got here.
Well, good to speak to you. Good to see you come home for a good result, and best of luck in the rest of the season.
Thanks, PCA, and thanks to you guys in the broadcast booth.
That leaves one more of our top three. John Kaplan, will you run?
And John Kaplan with us now in the broadcast booth. John, welcome in. P3 for you at the end of a pretty wild race here at Phillip Island. I don't think there are too many drivers who are quite happy about the way this racetrack treated them here tonight. How did it treat you?
I just wanted to keep it on the track and not hit anybody, and I guess I succeeded. I don't have any incidents for tonight, but I was a little surprised that I wound up on the podium. It's the first time.
Yeah, so first time podium in dramatic circumstances, but a podium nonetheless. It was great to see you out there on the track tackling the challenge of what proved to be a bit of a beast here in round number 2 of this championship. I want to ask you though about the strategy. Saw some drivers make quite an early call into the pits, quite different than the last round in the championship when the other pit stops were quite late. How tricky was it trying to think on your feet with the strategy?
The only strategy that I try to go as long as I can before doing a pit stop, unless I'm in a lot of traffic and I just want to give myself a little bit of a rest. But hey, since I'm on the podium for the first time, I do want to give a shout out to the instructors, especially Mike. I wouldn't be here without them, and I really appreciate what you guys do. And I also appreciate all the competition out there on the track. A lot of great drivers in this series.
And I'll tell you what, man, this is honest. Seeing you drivers out there on the racetrack bringing the thunder, it makes our job a heck of a lot easier up here in the broadcast booth. I can tell you that much. But next time out, we'll be running at Sebring. That's going to be a fun one to look forward to in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've never raced there before, but we have a lot of practice sessions between now and then, and I hope I can be competitive there as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack there, John. Thank you so much for joining us here in the booth, and we'll see you next time out at Sebring.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You as well, John. Thank you for joining us. That right there was John Kaplan joining us here in the broadcast booth. And Howie, this was a wild race, I think it's fair to say. Talk about Phillip Island being a beast. It proved to be a very tricky one to try and slay.
That was a very hard race to really make sense of, to be honest. I mean, as much as the track goes up and down like a roller coaster, so does the... Oh, sorry, Ron just moved over to race control. We're going to see if we can get an early decision. But I'll wrap up here. So does the racing action here. Lots of errors, but also lots of people just not really being able to nail and perfect their laps going around the track. Now, Ron has just jumped down our channel to race control. We're going to see whether race control is able to make a final decision on the race. It looks like you're back. Have you heard anything new?
Yeah, so just spoke with Race Control. There's 24 hours between when a call has to be made, so they will be looking at that very carefully. Of course, we will keep you firmly in the loop and let you know about any penalties that may come out come time for the broadcast of round number 3 here of the PCA Challenge class in Series 15. That'll be on February the 12th here on RaceSpotTV at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You'll be able to catch all the PCA action every single week. Of course, we'll be getting the Sebring action kicked off in just about 6 days time when the pro class drivers hit the racetrack there. Sebring is always iconic. Sports car racing at Sebring, that goes together quite like peanut butter and jelly. So hopefully all of you will be able to tune to the broadcast, and hopefully all of you have been able to tune into these broadcasts here at Phillip Island tonight. It's been a treat. It's been a wild one. Crazy incidents, crazy finish, some brilliant racing, and a track that some racers love while others may absolutely despise. I want to thank all of you for tuning into this broadcast here on RaceSpotTV tonight. But for myself, Ron Mullins, Howie Burrows joining me in the broadcast booth, and Ramiro Augustine Cisneros working all the cameras and the graphics in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for tuning into the action here on RaceSpotTV tonight, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.